to go. Everybody's on.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Then hello. I'll officially call the study session meeting to order. And Sylvia, can you do the comments now? Why don't we do that now, and then we'll get into the pledge.
Good afternoon, President Powell. This is Maricela. I'll be sitting in for Sylvia.
Oh, sorry, Marcella, I couldn't see you.
It's okay. Let me start off with the comments. I would like to make clear for the record that this meeting is being conducted as permitted under AB 361 and Board Resolution number 2021-43 in an effort to protect public health, prevent the spread of COVID-19, and because state and or local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing, the public may view this board meeting online or virtually. The public may also attend the meeting in person. The meeting is being streamed live on the district's website, www.cvwd.org. And as stated on the agenda, excuse me, members of the public who wish to comment on any item on the agenda may provide comments in person or via Zoom, which, let me just double check, see if we have anybody. And we do not have any members of the public.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, with that, why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Very good. And a roll call, please, Marcella.
Okay, good afternoon again. President Powell.
Here.
Vice President Estrada.
Here.
Director Bianco will be absent for today's meeting. Director Aguilar.
Here.
And Director Nelson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And I believe we still have nobody wishing to make public comment. If somebody comes in and wants to make public comment, just let me know if they raise their hand on the Zoom meeting or come into the room. As this is a study session, no action will be taken at this meeting. We have one item for study today, which is the Sanitation Fund Cost of Service Study. And Jeff Keel, why don't you take it over?
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, President Powell, members of the board. This is our second and final study session for the Sanitation Cost Service Study. Eric Coloquia from Nugen is here again to present with it for us. And the last session back on January 18th, we'd heard direction from the board to seek to get the CIP spread out as far as possible over a number of years, and that has been done. It's now spread out over a period of 12 years in total. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric and let him get going.
Thank you, Jeff. The presentation today is, as Jeff mentioned, an update to our cost of service study for the Sanitation Fund, looking at our financial forecast. We're going to talk a little bit about some key dates, looking forward at the study timeline to get the study wrapped up. And then we'll talk about our initial recommendation and our revised scenario for the Sanitation Fund financial forecast. Next slide, slide 4. Looking forward, we had our first study session on January 18th. We are here today on February 15th. On March 8th, we may provide the board a check-in information item during the regular board meeting on the status of the study. March 22nd, I know on the slide it says 6 p.m. Jeff, I believe that's been changed to an 8 a.m. meeting. That happened after we submitted our material.
That's correct. That
is where we will provide our final report for the sanitation study, and we anticipate the approval of mailing of Proposition 218 notices for the recommended rates. At the May 10th board meeting, we anticipate the public hearing for the rate approval and the deadline to transfer the information to the tax assessors July 31st, 2022. Next slide.
Just so you know, I'm not seeing any slides. Should be me.
I am seeing them on the boardroom AV.
Yeah, I'm getting them, John. Maybe if you get the gallery view, click the view button.
Let me try that.
Yeah, and then you could pin that particular screen.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So the next several slides are going to describe the revisions and the refinements we've made to our financial forecast. So next slide, slide 6, please. So our January 18th board session, I apologize, not 15th. We have worked with engineering staff to refine and revise the capital improvement plan scenario for the sanitation fund. We've primarily done two things. We have pushed projects out as far as possible. So there has been no removal of any capital projects. We have only revised the scheduling to move projects out of the study period and an additional forecast of out years, fiscal year 31 to 34. We've also refined our escalation assumptions, looking at projects in fiscal year 2022 dollars and escalating them into the future. The table on the top right of this slide shows our initial forecast that was presented and the revised forecast and the difference. So within the study period of fiscal year 22 to 27, we have a $39 million reduction. In the out years of 28 to fiscal 30, an $87 million reduction. And the additional projects pushed out into fiscal year 31 to 34 is $102 million in escalated capital improvement plan costs. The other two items that we have included in our revised forecast is a contribution into the sanitation fund from the supplemental water supply charge fund of $17 million to offset fiscal year 2022 non-potable water projects. That will leave a remainder of $10 million in the SWSC fund. In addition to that $17 million, we have forecasted $1.3 million from the supplemental water supply charge fund into the sanitation fund on an annual basis to support non-potable water projects. So those two transfers were not considered in our initial forecast.
Eric, just before you move on, so I see how you get to the 23. That's 40 minus the 17. How does that get you to the 10?
I'm sorry, that's the remainder in the supplemental water supply charge fund. That is a separate fund from the sanitation fund. We are bringing in $17 million. The remainder in that other fund will be about $10 million once we transfer out that $17 million.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. It looks to me like you're starting at 40, you're moving to 17, you get to 23.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. The sanitation fund debt service in our initial forecast was anticipated to be $40 million. We are subtracting $17 million from that to get to $23 million. So the in-process debt service for the sanitation fund is now $23 million rather than 40 in our initial forecast. That's a reduction of $17 million.
Okay, and then that leaves 10?
That leaves 10 in the supplemental water supply charge. So currently there's about 27 in that fund. We'll pull 17 into the sanitation fund to offset our debt service obligation, leaving 10 million.
Okay, and then we're going to transfer the remainder of that until we draw down all the 10 million?
No, it's just there as an option. So what Eric's showing is of the 27, we are recommending to go ahead and use 17 and leave the other 10 unencumbered at this moment. But if you notice the third bullet, we're looking at saying the new money that's coming in, 1.3 million a year is anticipated. That is going in to help fund the sanitation fund directly.
Okay, so and I guess that's what I'm trying to understand, because I know we're getting out of a system where we were collecting the supplemental water supply charge, and it sounds to me, or at least as I recall, that we're not calling that anymore, and the way that, you know, are we completely doing away with the supplemental water supply charge? Did we do that already?
You did the action. I think the name changed to.
Yeah, whatever it changed to.
Yes.
So whatever it changed to, is the 1.3 coming out of whatever new mechanism we implemented? And then I guess my question is, if we're going to keep 10 million somewhere that you're not going to transfer, what is it? What's the intent for that 10 million to do what?
It's available to use for another project.
We didn't want to commit all of the supplemental water supply charge under the alternative here, because we don't know where we might otherwise want to use that moving forward. We thought dedicating 17 of the 27 would be sufficient to get us down to what we felt would be a reasonable rate proposal moving forward. If the board wants to move more of the 27 million in, that's possible, but I didn't want to overcommit. We thought this was a sufficient move. It left us flexibility moving forward and still provided the rate reduction under this proposal that the board was looking for.
Okay, thank you. Is that the account going to remain at 10 million, or is that where the new money is going to go into, or is that going to be a separate account? What I mean is, this new thing that we're implementing, the offset, I think we're calling it an offset, is that going to be co-mingled with these 10 million, or is that going to be somewhere else?
So we will continue to collect fees from new development moving forward. A portion of those fees are projected. The 1.3 million of the new fees coming in is projected to continue to buy down non-potable projects under the sanitation fund moving forward. We will still have the 10 million and whatever comes in from development that is in excess of the 1.3 million identified to transfer to the sanitation fund will continue to be held in this developer fund for other projects as we move forward and as we need them.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm trying to understand is what other, you know, what it, this 10 million plus whatever the excess is from the 1.3 is going to continue to grow that pot. And are those monies available for us to build improvements on the system to continue to help develop development projects? Is that part of that backup facility charge?
So this is Carrie Oliphant. The supplemental water supply charge, those funds can be used for recharge or in lieu recharge, because the water demand offset fee is helping to fund non-potable water projects, which are in lieu recharge projects that leave water in the ground. And the supplemental water supply charge was originally designed to import water to put water into the ground. So, or purchase water supplies to put water in the ground. So we have that nexus now. If we're doing an in lieu recharge project or a recharge project, we can use the supplemental water supply charge. We have a really large project called the Palm Desert Groundwater Replenishment Phase 2 project. I'm getting confirmation from BBK that these funds, the supplemental water supply charge, the 10 million that we have remaining, you know, that we could potentially use those funds for that project. And we plan to update the board on that project in the next month or so. So that's another project that's on the horizon. And then there's always these other non-potable water connections that the funds could be used for to help offset any loans that we might apply for.
Okay, I just one more question, Carrie, Jim, whoever can answer. There's a pot of money that we have that we can use to, and I think I've heard you use the number, Jim, in the past, I think $1 billion a year I forget the term we use for it, but it's money that we can use to upgrade our system. And I think it's a way to, it's part of our impact fees, right? And so we use that to expand up the system to serve new projects, new developments. Is any of those funds commingled with this, with wherever this 10 million is going to stay?
No.
And no?
No, that's the
Okay.
water, we have a water system backup facility charge, and that is to fund new growth-related projects on the domestic water side. That's a separate fund from the supplemental water supply charge. And then we have the sanitation capacity charge, which is similar to the water supply, the backup, I know I can't even say it, water system backup facility charge. But the sanitation capacity charge is to fund new projects related to growth on the sewer side. They're all in 3 separate funds for 3 separate purposes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I understood, or that I had some clarity that this pot of money was not in the same pot as the sanitation capacity charge. But I think you just confirmed that. Thank you.
Right, and now we're gonna have the water demand offset fee. That's gonna be in its own, it's gonna be separate from the supplemental water supply charge, the remaining 10 million or whatever remaining amount is in there. And it'll be separate from the water system backup facility charge and the sanitation capacity charge.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before we move off this slide, I wanted to point out one other thing on that first major bullet on the changes that occurred with the CIP. First of all, none of the projects were eliminated. They're all deemed necessary. So the focus was on pushing them out. You added that third column there for fiscal years 31 to 34. You see 102 million of the projects that were previously included in the last study session have been pushed even beyond the study ×2. So, way out there in the last set of years. Also, it's significant to note that a recalibration of the escalation assumptions has been done. And if you're interested, the estimate for each of those years increase is 2.1%. I would say that seems rather optimistic, but this is based upon a industry materials index that has been approved for use. So just wanted to point that out. Eric, back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. Move on to the next slide, slide 7. This slide shows the revised capital improvement plan in terms of the forecasted investment. The initial recommendation in the blue line is shown in the chart. The revised, including the revised financing plan, is shown in the green line. So you can see particularly the reduction in the last 3 or 4 years of the study period, fiscal year 24 to 27. Particularly the WARP 4 investments in non-potable water have been moved outside of the study period beyond fiscal year 2027. We do still have assumptions of future debt service using state revolving loan fund programs, about 42 million in the study period, fiscal 23 to 27, with an additional 93 million in out years beyond the study period. Next slide shows our revised forecast given the revisions and refinements of the capital improvement program and the additional transfers into the sanitation fund. You can see the proposed rate revenue increase, about 8.8% in the first year and 8.5% per year thereafter. The monthly impact on the single family residential one ESU customer is shown in the top table as our revised forecast, compared to the bottom table, which was our initial recommendation presented to the board on January 18th. Next slide, 9.
Actually,
shows our revised forecast on the left hand.
I have a question. Sorry, Jeff, were you saying something?
Go ahead, Director Aguilar.
So, and it could be I'm just confused, but this revised capital improvement plan scenario that you discussed previously, which is a 65 PAYGO, 10 grant, 25 debt, is different than the percentages that you have on the financial forecast that you're showing us. So is there a separate forecast for that formula, or am I just completely messed up?
I apologize. The revised forecast percentages should match the previous slide, the 65, 10, 25.
Okay, thank you.
So you're right. The financing forecast shown on slide 7 is included in the revised forecast, and that includes the reduction in that debt percentage is due to the $17 million offsetting the need to issue new debt.
Okay, understood.
What I did want to add on this, I'm sorry, it was muted. I do want to point out, so again, focusing on the middle of the page there, that the numbers that we're looking at.
On slide 8, I'm sorry,
slide 8, yes, thank you. So I do just want to let the board be clarified on the point that a great deal of work still needs to happen over the coming weeks as the NuGen team is finalizing their report. We had wanted, though, to get very solid estimates for you on what the rate impacts would be, so that before we come back on the March 22nd meeting for you to receive the report and approve the mailing of Prop 218 notices, we really are hoping to get somewhat of a head nod from you as far as your comfort level on the numbers that you're seeing here. So I will mention that as we look at these numbers here on the monthly impact, we do expect that final work will change those numbers slightly in fiscal years 24 to 27. It may go up or down by a penny. And in 23, we expect it to go down up to maybe a dime. So these figures are very close to what you're going to be seeing in the final report as we bring it back on March 22nd. And so at the end of this meeting, it would be nice if we can get a little feedback on how you're feeling overall on where we're at. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Jeff. On slide 9, we show our revised forecast. The left chart shows the sanitation fund revenue requirement versus the 2 revenue forecasts. The black line is total revenue, assuming fiscal year 22 rates remain unchanged through the forecast period. The yellow line is assuming the adoption of our forecasted revenue increase plan shown on the previous slide. On the right-hand side is our forecasted sanitation fund balance. This reflects, again, a strategic drawdown of undesignated reserves to designated reserve policy over the course of the forecast period. This, of course, includes revenue increases along, consistent with our forecasted plan, drawing down on reserves, and making the investments in the revised CIP that has been pulled out beyond the study period. Slide 10.
A quick comment on that too is we talked about in the last study session the anticipation that this level of rates would be continuing in the future, and that's still the case, and actually more so that Eric and his team see those 8% increases being necessary going out several years, and that the final remaining reserve above target is actually going to be gone within a couple of years. So it's important to realize what we're getting into by avoiding the larger increases earlier on.
So if I could summarize that a little bit more, Jeff, we have $60 million in reserve right now, and we're going to be just over $30 million in 5 years. And so that roughly 25 to 27 million will leave the sanitation fund balance in terms of funding the capital and O&M program.
Yes, that's a good summary. And when Eric gets to slide 11, you'll see more details on the fund balance.
And so the dotted red line on slide number 9 on the right side, that's the designated reserves. So we're only going to have just a couple $1 million left in non-designated reserves. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Moving to slide 10. So similar to the slide we showed the board with our initial forecast. The green bars, the forecast on the left-hand side, is the forecasted single-family residential bill under the revised forecast, increasing from about $24.62 to just above $37 in fiscal year 27. The yellow line and the dollars amount shown above those green bars is what we had projected initially in our forecast with the higher increases before the CIP revision. So you can see the difference in the revised forecast. On the right-hand side are the comparable system for fiscal year 22 single-family residential bill. Again, those we anticipate would increase within the forecasted years. Those are based on the current fiscal year 22 bill for those systems.
So do these, Eric, comparative rates for these other agencies, do they include connection costs for golf courses?
These are just single-family residential bills. So I'm assuming if any of these systems have those fees, it's built into their financial profile. I don't have the detail on that to say which one of these include those types of revenues in their fund.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on to slide 11. This is a detailed forecast of the 5-year cash flow for the sanitation fund. Here you can see the beginning fund balance and the ending fund balance. The drawdown on reserves in the net cash flow line. So this is a demonstration of drawing down on undesignated reserves to fund sanitation fund capital. This includes the revisions to the capital improvement plan. It includes the increases in revenues in our revised forecast, and it includes all of the revenue transfers from the supplemental water supply charge fund.
So Jeff, even though this, even though this forecast suggests at the bottom of the page that it meets all of the cash flow and the debt coverage and the reserve target tests, you don't think this would be an issue that the issue that Peter was talking about, the fund balance being depleted basically in half within 5 years or so, that's not going to be an issue for our issuers or for debt service or for future offerings or our rating?
Obviously, more is better whenever you're looking at those situations. But no, what we have been discussing with ratings agencies is that this has been a very strategic plan, very intentional delivery of the cash flow needs for the 5-year program that's in front of us for each of these funds, and to be managing our reserves and looking at the amounts above our targets as available to help hold off the need for more severe increases in the rates during that time. And it's been viewed favorably at this point. Now, if we got down the road into the next service study, starting with fiscal year 28, and there was suddenly a lack of appetite from the board to pursue the same kind of increases that we've basically laid out as a necessary pattern to happen for the next several years after this 5-year window, then that could be harmful to our credit rating.
Okay, thank you.
That's why, we just want to make sure the board's eyes are wide open on, yes, we're getting the impacts of the rate increases down in the window of this Prop 218, but we don't want anyone to have any illusions that, it's just going to be, COLA-like after that, which has been our goal in other funds. Eric, can we go back to slide 4 for a second? I just want to briefly remind the board what the implications of our schedule here. So if you look at where we're at between today and February 15th and March 22nd, which is when we would be having to receive the report and approve the mailing of 218 notices, when you take into account the administrative needs for getting that board agenda published in time, there's really only 3 weeks of time between today and when that needs to be done. So I don't, mean to sound heavy-handed, but that's why I mentioned at the beginning, I'll mention again now, we really would like a sense of where the board is at with this, because there's a significant amount of work that will be done based upon these assumptions being acceptable to the majority of the board and allowing them to finish their work and do the final refinements. So, we don't want to have a situation we come back on March 22nd and suddenly there's some buyer's remorse about the plan that we've laid out for you. That, I think we open it up to the board for any questions or comments.
Thanks, Jeff and Eric. If you made everything 5%, I'd feel better about it. On the increases. You know that.
Yeah, you would, but in a year you wouldn't.
What do you mean?
Because I'd be saying, we need to do a new Prop 218 because we don't have enough.
Well,
we're really trying to thread the needle again.
No, I understand. No, I appreciate the improvement from the last meeting.
And we know it's not insignificant on a percentage basis, but again, we'd like to remind the board that focusing on the dollar impacts, it's really very small monthly impacts on the typical family home.
I think very small is relative, Jeff. I don't think we should characterize that. I think it isn't. It's an increase, an 8.5% increase, and we ought to call it an 8.5% increase. I mean, I'm looking at that and thinking, hey, we're right now we're a little bit less than half of San Diego, and that's a good position to be in. But I don't think any increase is insignificant. I think that we're moving it up, and we're moving it at, let's call it 8.5%, and I think that's a number people can relate to, and they think of last month was a 7% inflationary rate, and look, Coachella is doing all that they can responsibly with the resources that we have, and we're going to draw down $30 million of reserves, and that is going to fall above our target level, so we're still in good shape. So it seems like a reasonable and prudent thing to do. So at this point, it all looks favorable to me moving forward. Much better than the 13%, I think it was, from the first crack at this. Yeah.
You know, one of the other selling points of just the whole, you know, how did we get here? Because we were building reserves in this fund for so many years, and now we're going to use them, is all those projects to reuse the water. You know, I mean, that's a pretty good story to tell when people are going to have to dig into their pockets and pay a higher rate every month. That at least we can say, hey, we're doing some, you know, you look at Valley Sand, who's not doing a lot of those things. We're going to be reusing this water and being much more sustainable than we otherwise would be. I think that's got to be part of the sales pitch for this thing.
Hey, Jim, is Robert in the room?
Yes, sir, he is.
So, you know, really the capital costs that we're incurring in this program are the disposition of you know, water. You know, a fair amount is for the disposition of the water to use in a recycled manner. And, you know, we Robert and I don't know if you were on it this morning, Jim, but the Bureau is having these listening sessions with farmers and different groups. And, you know, we are investing in a tremendous amount of facilities to reuse the water, for which agencies like MAT and the Bureau, the state of Nevada, the state of Arizona are also investing in those. And, you know, we're doing this on our own. And I think, you know, I'd like to have the staff explore some kind of possibilities of tapping into those funds as a way to save some water. But if that's a little problematic in the fact that, you know, we don't want to share these savings because it has to go to our future water supply, at least we should be, at minimum, we should be, you know, explaining what we're doing on these programs in order to reuse our water, and we should have, you know, some kind of credit for that, and even if it's just a pat on the back. But this is an area where I think, you know, we're investing a lot of money in, and our ratepayers are investing a lot of money in, and it's for the good of the whole Colorado River Basin, to be honest with you.
Yes, sir. I was on the call this morning, the listening opportunity. I thought Robert did a very good job in
very good
in expressing some alternatives. There were a number of folks on there that talked about parochial issues where they were asking for infrastructure, but they didn't really have the water to use the infrastructure, which I thought was somewhat puzzling. But no, I agree. And I think staff is trying to find, wherever possible, new funding opportunities. I know there's the Water Smart program under the Bureau of Reclamation, their Title 16. So, you know, we'll absolutely look for those opportunities wherever we can. We have identified projects, and I think we'd like to proceed, recognizing we're under a kind of a pressing timeline of impending regulation changes for wastewater effluent. So, you know, again, part of our problem has been the processes which the funding agencies have in place put a pretty tremendous administrative burden on staff when we look at the state revolving fund loans that come through, when it's perhaps more expedient for us to just go out and sell bonds. So we're looking at opportunities where we might be able to change course and actually deliver projects a little bit faster without a huge difference in the overall debt service that we have to pay moving forward.
Thanks, Jim.
Hi, sir.
That's good stuff.
John, I would just say two things. One is that I think the staff has done what the board asked them to do and coming back with this revised schedule. I still have concerns about the draw on the net cash flow and where that leaves us in 5 years. I also, and Jeff, you said that you're going to finalize your numbers and polish them and come back, and you don't think that would merit more any increase or so. And if that's
no, as Eric had explained to me as he went through the numbers, it looks like those numbers could only move like maybe a penny upwards or down for the last 4 years.
okay.
And the first year is actually going to be a small drop.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, I would just say, I would reserve my final determination based on seeing what that final number looks like, because if for some reason or other the number comes back to us and there's a variant that's greater than what we had anticipated for some unknown reason, and that has happened, then I would say yes, give you the nod today, but it would be with, that stipulation.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You guys mentioned that the inflator on these capital projects is 2.1%. That does seem awfully low, given what seems to be a new environment in terms of all these supply chain increases. Who's telling us that 2.1% is right, and when did they tell us that?
The indice, and I can bring it up here real quick. I apologize. It's a blue chip economic indicator report. It comes out on a monthly basis. It is a group of economists and analysts that do a forward-looking projection of economic indicators and various escalation indices. This one is a forward-looking estimate of a overall, cost escalation index.
And so that came out last month?
I can pull this one. It might be quarterly. This is from October 11th, 2021.
One of the other things, President Powell, that went on in that analysis, and again, thank you to Carrie Oliphant and Armando Rodriguez for their work on this. And Armando identified a number of the projects where the assumption had been, because they had been proposed a couple of years ago, that the numbers were at older values, but they had already been updated. So that helped lower the escalation need that NuGen was anticipating. They went through project by project and said, is this at the current estimated cost in today's dollars?
I'd be curious to see if this, I guess if it came out in October, there would be another report that was already published in January, right? Now that people are thinking that inflation is less transitory, I wonder what effect that's going to have on that number. I mean, if we're worried about surprises, that could be one right there.
We can look at if there's an updated report.
Yeah, and just to not take us down another rabbit hole, but we are holding 10 million of the current water system backup, well, not the supplemental water supply charge, which will become renamed as the water demand supply offset charge. So that 10 million would be available to supplement if we need more money to actually award construction projects moving forward on the non-potable side, which is really where we're looking to spend some of the money. And then new development will come in or not. We have seen an uptick in development more so this last year, where we installed over 1,000 new meters, and just for the last month of January, we were close to 100. I think we had 80 something. Not our best January, but clearly breaking a pattern from a number of years we saw in the past. So I think, I think we've tried to consider as many of the factors, the unknowns, as we possibly can. I think it's reasonable. We did reduce below the 10% the board was asking us to do. And certainly moving forward, if trying to maintain the rates approved by the board becomes a priority, then we'll further adjust and reduce where we possibly can. I mean, there's no guarantee that every project included in this analysis will actually be done. We have to make assumptions based on what we see at the time we put the rate case together.
Right. I agree. All right, anything else? That's our one item of study, so this concludes our study session. We're adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric.